Well, good morning, everybody. I think it's time. Yeah. All righty. I think we're live. Welcome to our Wednesday Bible study at the Arlington Road Church of Christ in Hopewell, Virginia. We're in Mark chapter 11, and we want to look at the first. I want to read the first 11 verses out of Mark chapter 11. Before we get started, you might want to mark a few Old Testament passages of scripture. One is Psalm 118, and we're going to look at verses 22 down to verse 25 or 26. Psalm 118, verses 22 through 26. Zechariah chapter 9 and verse number 9 is another passage of scripture that we want to look at. We've got several of our members who are either in the hospital or had a procedure. Sister White and then Brother Robertson was taken to the hospital on Monday. And let's be prayerful for both families, both individuals as they recuperate and recover. Pray for speedy healing, a speedy recovery and healing of the body. Mark chapter 11. Okay, good. We're on. And we're looking at verses 1 through 11. Let's see if I can get this screen working like I want it to work. I think our banner is backwards. Okay. Mark chapter 11, verses 1 through 11. Background information is this is the last week that leads up to the crucifixion of Jesus. And some people call this Passion Week, the Passion Week of Jesus. And he is going to be crucified. So this is the last week. So when we read through Mark's gospel, it starts in chapter 11. And, Mark ends his gospel in chapter 16, and there's a lot of events that take place, but this is Passion Week, and this is right before the crucifixion. So a lot of things take place. And one of the things that I want you to notice in this passage of scripture is the prerogative of Jesus, because he's going to tell his disciples, two of his disciples, to go into the city and to untie a colt, a donkey, and then to bring that donkey. Then he's going to ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. So I want to talk about the prerogative of Jesus. Why a donkey? Why something simple like a donkey for the king to ride on? I want to talk about the preparation that had to be made, because when the disciples got there, the owners asked a question, and they responded with a statement that Jesus said, "Loosing, the master has need of you." So I want to talk about the preparation that had to be made prior to the disciples getting there. And what I really want to talk about is purpose. And I hope that I can encourage those who are here and those who are watching to discover their purpose in life. What is your purpose in life? And I'm gonna allegorize a lot with this text when we talk about God using a donkey. So if God can use a donkey, or if a donkey has purpose, then you and I, human beings, flesh and blood, body, soul, and spirit, intellect, we need to discover our purpose. And you know, there's something heavy on my heart because I think that sometimes people live a life and they never discover what their purpose is. They go through life, and sometimes we live a long time. And when I say a long time, if you get your 70 in, you're thankful to God. If you go past that, you're living a long time. And then some people don't live long. I've got a couple students, and I work in corrections, and there's a couple of my ex-students, former students, I should say it like that. After they get out, we get bad news about them. I mean, immediately getting out of corrections, then they overdose on drugs. Young, just young, and these are former students. This is not, I heard about this. These are people that sat in my classroom, and then they get out, and you would think that they would have a new lease on life, another chance, but something triggers them where they want to experiment again, and their body is not ready because they've been incarcerated, they've been detoxed for a certain period of time. Then they get out there, and the first thing they want to do is experiment with drugs. And I think one of the reasons people do things like that is because they don't know their purpose, or they don't realize what their purpose in life is. So I hope I can say something before we're through about purpose, and about how we need to be concerned about our purpose and our God-given purpose. And also, I hope I can say something that will encourage us to be used by the Lord. And as I said, I'm going to allegorize. And when we talk about allegory, when the donkey was untied, then he could be used by the Lord. I want you to think about, what things are you tied to that keeps you from being used by the Lord? All right, everybody with me? Yes. Mark chapter 11. You'll also find this in Matthew chapter 21. And I think I'm going to go to that passage too, because Matthew fills in some things that Mark leaves out. And when you look at different narratives of the same passage, you want to look for things that others have left out, and then you want to ask why. What's the reason? Why are these things left out? So it's always good to remember that the writers of the gospel wrote to a particular audience. And by writing to a particular audience, there were things that were specific to that audience that wouldn't apply to another audience. Y'all give me a minute. I'm trying to do some technical stuff here. The email keeps coming up. Okay. And Mark is writing to a Roman audience. It's a Roman audience, and Jesus is going to Jerusalem. He's going to be crucified by the Jews, but the Roman officials are going to be involved in the crucifixion. Pilate is going to give his permission for Jesus to be crucified. Matthew is writing to a Jewish audience. So we're going to look at both of these passages and then make some observation. Now, when they drew near Jerusalem to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples. And he said to them, "Go into the village opposite you, and as soon as you have entered it, you will find a colt tied on which no one has sat. Loose it and bring it. And if anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' say, 'The Lord has need of it.' And immediately he will send it here." Now, I think you might see the prerogative and the preparation right in these verses right here. And we can even get the purpose out of this. So I'm going to read all 11 verses, but we may not even get past verse number 3. If anyone says to you, "Why are you doing this?" say, "The Lord has need of it." And immediately he will send it here. So it's important to understand that the owner of the coat has some prior information about individuals coming to Jesus asking for this coat to be unloosed. What's also important is for you to understand that the coat or the donkey had never been ridden on. So it was a special coat, a special donkey. Just wasn't any kind of donkey, but this is a donkey that had never been sat on. All right. So they went their way and found the coat tied by the door outside on the street, and they loosed it. But some of those who stood there said to them, "What are you doing, loosing the coat?" And they spoke to them just as Jesus had commanded, so they let them go. Then they brought the coat to Jesus and threw their clothes on him, and he sat on it. And many spread their clothes on the road, and others cut down leafy branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Then those who went before and those who followed cried, saying, and someone get Zechariah chapter 9 and verse number 9, because this is going to fulfill a prophecy. But notice what they cried out, saying, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the kingdom of our father David that comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." So if we were preparing to teach this, one of the key words is Hosanna. What does the word Hosanna means? And I'm going to explain that a little later in our class. Hosanna, Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the kingdom of our father David that comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And Jesus went into Jerusalem and into the temple. So when he had looked around at all things, as the hour was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Hold your finger here and let's look at Matthew's gospel, Matthew chapter 21. And this is the triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Passover is being observed. So there's a crowd of people on their way to Jerusalem, but this crowd is also in anticipation of the king. Now, when I talk about the king, I'm talking about Jesus. And of course, when I think about Jesus being king, I think about my grandmother's favorite song, "He's My King." And oh, I dearly love him. And there were Jews who were aware of what the Old Testament passages mention about the coming of the king. And we're going to read that in just a few minutes. Matthew 21, starting verse number 1. Now, when they drew near Jerusalem and came to Bethpage at the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples and saying to them, go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them to me. Y'all see the difference? Matthew has a donkey and a colt. Mark just mentions the colt. He doesn't mention a donkey and a colt. And if anyone says anything to you, you shall say, the Lord has need of them, and immediately he will send them. All this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, tell the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, lowly and sitting on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. So the disciples went and did as Jesus had commanded them. They brought the donkey and the colt and laid their clothes on them and set him on them. And a very great multitude spread their clothes on the road. Others cut down branches from the trees and spread them on the road. You see how what they're doing for Jesus? They're going out of their way. You know, they recognize he's the king. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Sometimes I guess it's best just to stick with my notes. But what I wanted you to see here is Jews expected a king to come, but many of the Jews expected him to come in a royal way. They expected him to come with pomp and circumstance. Even when a king would come back from war and he was victorious in the war, there would be a big parade, like the Macy Day parade, Thanksgiving, that kind of thing, you know, and the king would come back with the spoils, and he would be laid out, attire. I mean, it was a big deal. But when Jesus comes back, he doesn't come back the way that they expected him to come back. But the people are laying branches out, trying to pave the way. You know, this is a red carpet experience, but it's a different kind of red carpet experience because Jesus is meek and lowly. He's humble. Another thing that's interesting, prior to this, Jesus had wanted his miracles to be kept secret. I don't know if you remember us talking about the Messianic secret, where he would do certain things. He said, don't tell nobody. Don't you tell nobody. And then even on the Mount of Transfiguration, when certain things happen, don't tell anybody what happened. But now Jesus wants it to be known, because before, when he said don't tell anybody, is he hadn't fulfilled the mission yet. There were things that needed to be done. I don't want word to get out yet, because the Jews who misunderstand my mission and the Romans who misunderstand my ministry, so mission and ministry and miracles, they're going to misunderstand it. They might get in the way. They might throw some roadblocks. And there's a plan that God has in mind, and everything I'm doing is leading up to that. So now in this last week of his life, this is the last week of his life. And now Jesus knew that this was the last week of his life. This past Sunday, I made a point about expiration date. And I used the example of, you buy eggs at the grocery store, on the egg carton, there's an expiration date. On the milk carton, there's an expiration date. Are there any other food items that have expiration dates? Cheese, everything. You see how often I go to the store. When I go to the store, I'll just grab it. You know, I'm just grab. Don't put it in the front aisle, the first aisle. You know, when you come in, they'll have certain things for sale, and oh man, you don't even need it, but it's there and it looks good, it's for sale, I'm just grabbing. Okay, well, food items have expiration dates, and Jesus knew that his expiration date was coming. So I want to go back to a point I made earlier. All of us should find out what our purpose in life is. Don't get close to your expiration date and you still don't know what your purpose is. Sometimes people live full lives and haven't realized their God-given purpose. And I want to believe everybody has a purpose in life. Everybody has a purpose in the Lord's church. The Lord needs you. And that's another point. Jesus, I'm borrowing this from a preacher, but a preacher said, Jesus lowered himself so that you could be used by him. He lowered himself. He's King of Kings. He's Lord of Lords, but he is lowering, Lowering. He is lowering himself for us to be used. So we're coming up, but he's coming down. And he has, the text says that the donkey tell the owner that the Lord needs the donkey. So why would the Lord need a donkey? Of all animals, of all creatures, because when the Roman king came back from victory, he would ride a horse. He would come on a horse. But Jesus is not coming on a horse. He's coming on a donkey. All right. But you and I would think that riding in on a donkey is humiliating, but not really, because I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to bring that out, but I want you to hold on to that. I want you to hold that. Why a donkey? Why a donkey and not a horse? All right, let's go back to the text. Mark 11, verse 1. Now, they end up at the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives rises about 200 feet higher than Mount Zion. Its crest is less than a mile directly east of Jerusalem. It's known for its many olive trees. Its slopes were the path of David's retreat from Jerusalem when David was escaping from his son Absalom. 2 Samuel chapter 15. This is significant about the Mount of Olives. On this mount, Solomon grieved God by erecting idols for his foreign wives to worship. On the Mount of Olives, Ezekiel witnessed the glory of God. Jesus, the son of David, makes his royal entry into Jerusalem from here, the Mount of Olives. On this mount, Jesus wept, Luke 19, over the disobedience and blindness of Jerusalem. There are two passages that I can think of where Jesus cried. Of course, at the grave of Lazarus, Jesus wept. And then Luke 19, Passion Week, he sees the disobedience and the blindness of Jerusalem, and he weeps. All right. I'm going back to what I said earlier about two of my former students. It makes you want to cry when you think about people that don't know their purpose, or people who waste their lives, or people who die and they're not close to the Lord. There are a lot of things in life that make you cry, but for a soul to be lost really ought to grieve you. At the Mount of Olives, the disciples witnessed the ascension of Jesus into his glory. All of this takes place on the Mount of Olives. Well, why a donkey? Why a donkey? All righty. Did anybody get a chance to read this passage before? It just wasn't a donkey. It just wasn't any kind of donkey, but it was a special kind of donkey. It had to be a donkey that no one had ridden on yet. Anybody like Westerns, cowboy movies, and you got a horse that you got to break? Y'all seen that? You know, the horse just be bucking. And then finally, you know, if the rider can stay on him long enough, he'll break him. All right. Well, this is not a wild donkey. It's not a wild colt, but it's a special animal because it had not been used before. I want you to see how God does things, how God works things. He wants to use a donkey, but not any kind of donkey, but it's the kind of donkey that no one had ridden on before. But the first person that's going to ride on this donkey is Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So there's symbolism, there's also prophecy, there's expectations, all in this. Zechariah chapter 9. Zechariah, one of the last books of the Bible in the Old Testament, Zechariah chapter 9. And this is a prophecy that talks about the coming of the Messiah. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Lo, your king comes to you, how? Triumphant and victorious is he. All right. And riding on an ass and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. Now, in other versions, it says, he is just and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. Now, the prerogative of God, the prerogative of Jesus riding on a donkey is that the king is coming in peace. So in Palestine, the donkey was not a despised beast, but a noble one. So there are cartoons and movies that make fun of a donkey, right? You know, and we use the vernacular sometimes in a negative way. But in Palestine, the donkey wasn't a despised beast. It was a noble beast. So when a king went to war, he rode on a horse. But when he came in peace, he rode on a donkey. So Jesus is the prerogative of God. The prerogative here is, here comes the king, but the king is coming in peace. And he's coming in a different way than everybody would expect. All right. Jesus just keeps blowing people's mind. I mean, the way he comes is different from the way that they thought he would. He sends 2 unnamed disciples into a local village. He told them that when they entered, they would find this colt tied up. No one ever sat on it. Now, another symbolism is the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament. In 1 Samuel chapter 6, verse 7, Numbers chapter 19, verse 2, Deuteronomy chapter 2 and verse 3, when the Ark of the Covenant needed an unyoked carrier. So when you look at Jesus riding on the donkey, he's the true Ark of the Covenant. He required an unridden animal. And the unridden animal is bringing the Holy One into Jerusalem. Just like the Ark of the Covenant was holy. It was a holy vessel. Jesus is holy, and he rides into Jerusalem. Now, that's God's prerogative. But preparation had to be made, y'all, because Jesus is telling them, y'all go into the city. I want you to go to a certain place. When you get there, I want you to go to the owner and tell the owner that the Lord has need of this colt. I'm assuming, and everything that I've read, pretty much everybody assumes the same thing, that Jesus had made prior arrangement with the owner. The owner perhaps was a follower or a disciple of Jesus. So this had been planned. This is not a spur of the moment thing. You know, there were times when Jesus went apart from his disciples, got away from them, did some things alone. All of this is in the plan of God, in the mind of God. So he says, go into the village. As soon as you have entered it, you will find a coat tied. No one has sat on it. You loose it. You loose it and bring it. And if anyone asks you or says to you, why are you doing this? You say the Lord has need of it, and immediately he will send it here. So preparation had to be made prior to the two disciples going there. Because can you imagine? Can you imagine? And I'm borrowing this. Somebody knocking on Bramari's door and say, give me the keys to your truck. The Lord has need of it. What you gonna say, Bramari? You know, you think you're crazy, okay? you know, somebody knocking on your door, brother. You know, hey, Bramari, I need the keys to your truck. It's a nice looking truck, you know. And the Lord has need of your truck, you know. But Mark said he gonna think the man is crazy, okay? All right. But I'm thinking that perhaps Jesus had a conversation with this man prior to, and I think somewhere I read, I'm trying to remember where it was. The code is the Lord has need of it. So it's probable that Jesus talked with the owner and said, look, I'm going to send folk and they're going to say to you, the Lord has need of it. All right. So preparation is being made. Preparation is being made. And the preparation is being made for a special kind of coat, a special kind of donkey, not an old donkey, not a donkey that's been ridden on, not a donkey that's old and ready to go to the grave. No, this is a young donkey that no one has ever ridden on, and the Lord has need of it. Now, here's the allegory again. If the Lord can use a donkey, don't you think he can use you? Yeah. So the Lord used a donkey for a divine purpose. How is the Lord using you? You know, that donkey's purpose was greater than serving the master who owned him. This particular donkey is being used for Jesus to ride into Jerusalem on. But that says to me, brothers and sisters, that the Lord has need of you. Every member in the Lord's church. Boy, I feel like preaching this. I just may just put a lesson together and preach this thing because boy, I tell you, this will preach. The Lord has need of you. He needs you. And don't ever say you can't be used by the Lord. Don't ever say that you don't have any purpose. Don't say that you are not valuable. Don't think like that. Don't think like, you know, you are insignificant or whatever ministry you're on is not valuable. No, the Lord has need of you. Young people, the Lord needs you. You know, we're baptizing, or we've got a lot of young people coming to our Bible class, which is a good thing. And the Lord needs them. Older members, seasoned members, the Lord needs you. So the Lord needs you. Now, You and I have to discover what that purpose is, how he needs us, how he's going to use us. And don't run from your purpose. But now, before the Lord can use us, we have to be loosed. So they went their way, found the coat tied by the door outside on the street, and they loosed it. Now, the Lord needs you. Now, think about that. God owns the whole world. The whole world is in his hands, right? Psalm 24 lets us know that everything belongs to the Lord, but he needs you to do certain things. He needed this coat. So you're more valuable than a donkey. You're more valuable than a coat, but the Lord needs you. But the Lord cannot use us until we untie ourselves from some things. Boy, if I had a laundry list, what's the laundry list of things that we need to be untied from? Sometimes we got to be untied from our job. The Lord can't use us because we're working too much. We've invested everything on our job, and the Lord can't use us because we tied to that job. We go to school and we get a degree, and we get a degree on top of the degree. Then we get a degree on top of the 2 degrees that we already have. We're always in school, and there's nothing wrong with going to school. There's nothing wrong with getting a degree, but don't be tied to that. Don't think that your degree defines you, and you get caught up in the job, or you get caught up in the degree. You get caught up in the career. Another thing that amazed me is when I leave the house on Sunday on our way to worship, and you'll see people cutting grass. You'll see people getting in their boat to go fishing. You see people with their golf clubs, and they're going to play golf. And I'm just assuming that they're not going to worship. I'm on my way to worship, and they're cutting grass. I'm on my way to worship. They're in the boat going fishing. I'm on my way to worship, and they're on the golf course. There's so many things that we have to loose ourselves from. We have to untie ourselves from in order to be used by God. Sometimes we invest in our children or our grandchildren, and they pull us away from serving the Lord. So there are things that we have to unloose ourselves from so that we can be, because we're tied to it, and the Lord can't use us. We're no good to him. We're not valuable to him, and we can't be used by him because we're so tied to things. I struggle with trying to help people understand how churches grow. What makes a church grow? How is it just the charisma of the preacher? Is he just so magnetic that he draws people in? Is it the singing of the congregation? And we're getting to the point where we're leaning towards entertainment to get people in. But even when you entertain people, you have to have folk. You have to have folk who are entertaining, who are committed to it. In denominational church, you have choirs. You got to practice if you're in the choir. If you're on the praise team, there's times when you come together and practice. But you got to untie yourself. Our teachers, I sometimes I wonder how we feel as teachers, and our teachers do a great job. But you have to loose yourself from things that would hinder you from putting in the time, study to be a good teacher. So in order to be used by the Lord, we got to be loosed. We got to be untied from some things. So Jesus said, if anyone said to you, why are you doing this? You say the Lord has need of it, and immediately he will send it here. So they went their way, found the coat tied by the door outside the street, and they loosed it. All right. But some of those who stood there said, "What are you doing loosing the coat?" So they spoke to them, and just as Jesus had commanded, so they let them go. All right. One of our new members, was baptized, and then I talked with him, and he said he had a job interview. And I said to him, "Man, that's great." He said to me, "The Lord, man, just like you preached, Bro Crusoe, about the Lord working things out in your life, things are just working out for me." And he had a job interview. I said, "Sir, young man," I pulled the old man card on him. I said, son, listen, let me help you with this. When you go to that interview, make sure that you let them know that you are a Christian and worshiping God on Sunday is a priority, that you are committed to serving the Lord. And I guarantee you, if you let them know that in that interview, you'll gain a lot of respect. So don't get tied up on a job. Don't get it confused. Well, the Lord knows I need a job, but that job is going to take you away from worship. No, you let them know on the front end that the Lord needs me, and I'm saved now, and I want blessings to come. And sometimes we can block our blessings because we're tied to things that are hindering our blessings. Am I making sense? The Lord wants to bless you. He'll open up windows of heaven when you do his will. And sometimes we get so tied to other things that we end up blocking our own blessings. So they told the person this group of people who were asking, "What are you doing loosing the coat?" They spake to them just as Jesus had commanded, so they let them go. That's the coat and the donkey. Now, Psalm 118, and around verse 22. And there's a passage that we read in around verse 24 where it said, "This is the day that the Lord has made." And I think it says, "We will rejoice and be glad in it." I'm thinking, and I could be wrong, but if I could be wrong, I could be right too. But I'm thinking verse 24 is referencing this day. This is the day that the Lord has made. I know on Sunday I will use it to motivate y'all. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the Lord's day. And this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice in it. But I want you to notice what happens here. They brought the coat to Jesus and threw their clothes on it, and he sat on the coat. Then those that were on the highway side spread their clothes on the road, and others cut down leafy branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Then those who went before and those who followed cried out, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the kingdom of our father, David, that comes in the name of the Lord." Hosanna in the highest. Now, Psalm 118, notice what takes place in Psalm 118. And the stone, I'm picking up with verse 22. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. That's the verse we often quote. Save now, I pray, O Lord. O Lord, I pray, send now prosperity. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Y'all see that? We have blessed you from the house of the Lord. So when the group cries out in Mark, the same thing that we just read in verse number 26, they cry out, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. This is Old Testament prophecy. So if verse 26 is Old Testament prophecy, I want to believe that verse 24, this is the day that the Lord has made, is part of Old Testament prophecy as well. But watch the paradox of the kingship of Jesus. His royalty, his deity is wrapped in a single person, yet he's moving forward in his declaration to be king in a lowly, weak, and servile way. He's not coming in pomp and circumstance, but he's coming in meekness. He comes in humility and simplicity. And, some people have said that the crowd that praised him is the same crowd that crucified him, but that's not true. This crowd is praising him. Hosanna, Hosanna. And the word Hosanna is not really praise, but the word Hosanna means save us, save us. So, when they cried out Hosanna, they're saying save us. So this is not the crowd that's crying out crucify him. That's a different crowd. Sometimes we think that the crowd that cried Hosanna is the same crowd that said crucify him. No, that's a different crowd altogether. But this crowd realized that the kingdom is going to be fulfilled. Man, there's a lot of scriptures, 2 Samuel 7 is being fulfilled. Isaiah 9, for unto us a son is born, a child is given. The government shall be on his shoulders. He shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God. All that's being fulfilled. Michael chapter 5, all of that's being fulfilled. But it's not being fulfilled the way that they thought or believed it would be. But they are right. Jesus is the king. He is their king. But he's not here to purge Israel from foreign domination, but he came to purge us from our sins. So they're looking at, we want to be released from the political adversity, the political domination, but Jesus ain't coming for that. He's coming just to save them from their sin. All right. So Hosanna in verses 9 and 10 is quoted and often used as it meant praise, but a transliteration of the Hebrew word Hosanna helps us to understand it means save now. Save now. So they're crying out to God to break in and save his people now because they realize he is the Messiah. Okay. What did I say in the beginning? I said I wanted you to see the prerogative of God, that he will use a donkey for Jesus to come riding in. Preparation had to be made prior to the two disciples going into the village and requesting for the donkey to be unloosed. But I want us to be thinking about our purpose, our purpose, our purpose. Why did God, why did God even allow you to be born? Why do you exist? What does God want from you? What's your purpose? How are you allowing God to use you for his divine purpose? And his divine purpose is for people to be saved. I mean, the bottom line is The work of the church is to save souls and to keep souls saved. That's really what it's all about. It's nothing extraordinary, but using ordinary people to do extraordinary things with the help of God. No, you may never thought that you would serve the Lord publicly. You may never thought that you would be a teacher. You never thought you would read scripture. You never thought you would officiate the table. You never thought that you could lead somebody to Christ. But all of us have a purpose, and we shouldn't go through life looking for our purpose, scratching our head. What's my purpose? Why am I here? What good can I do? All of us can be used by God. Okay. That's really the lesson today. What's going to happen is Jesus is going to go to the temple, and he's going to just go and look, see, and leave. Then he's going to come back. And in between his look, see, and coming back, he's going to curse a fig tree. So we're doing verse by verse. And what we'll do is we'll look at verse 12 and go through verse 26. But we're going to have to connect verses 20 with verses 12 through 14. And then look at verses 15 through 19. If you're free at 3 today, Bro Woodley is being honored on his job today. And if you're able to come, and he works for the school system, and it's the alternative school that's right next to the post office. So it's at 3:00 today. And if you're able to make it, I know that would be encouraging. Okay. All right. Let's keep Sister White in prayers, and also Brother Robertson is in the hospital. So Sister White did not have the procedure. Is that right? On yesterday. Okay. Okay. It looks like she's got to wait 7 more days. And then they'll reevaluate the procedure she was supposed to have. Let's keep her in prayer, and keep also Brother Robertson in prayer as well. All righty. Okay. Mother's Day is May 12th. Mother's Day. All right. So to our brothers who are watching, let's give some thought to how we're going to appreciate and honor our mothers on May 12th. To our teachers, we didn't meet in April for our regular teachers' devotion. I think I was out of town or something. We didn't meet. So we need to meet this coming Saturday. Check your texts, or check your text and let us know. Normally we meet in the evening, but we gave you an alternative time, and and that's a Zoom meeting as well. But Myra, would you give us a closing prayer?
Yes.
Okay.
Let us look to the Lord in prayer.